Hey RV family, keep it high. My name is Jay Morse, the review guy, reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the new Rivers of Nihil record entitled The Work. This is the new over an hour's worth of material record by the tech death legends Rivers of Nihil. Now say what you will about them coming around like at the turn of the last decade, but I genuinely think that alongside I'd say Archspire as well as a couple of others, Rivers of Nihil have successfully put themselves sort of in the pantheon of tech death legends with only 4 records under their belt counting this one. Because tech death and prog infused death metal can be hit or miss for me, and I know it can be hit or miss for a lot of people. If they become too ambitious, if they become too long-winded, it just sounds like a wank fest, like miasma. It just ends up sounding like lifeless. It has no meat left on the bones, nothing left to dissect. You get so infatuated with making the most technical riff you can make, but you forget the musicianship and the music itself. You become too focused on the nitty-gritty of it that you're not thinking of just the average listener. So for a band like Rivers of Nihil to exist with a very fun and dynamic style that's just all over the place and incorporating a ton of different genres, it's a breath of fresh air even if it's not your particular brand of tech death that you like. Maybe you like bands like I just described. I don't know. Good for you. Keep listening to what you like. Anyone that's been following this channel for a bit knows that the last record that they dropped ended up being one of my favorites the year that it did come out. It was jazzy, it was funky, it wasn't just simply tech death. Lots of old school heavy metal and blues influence in the vocals and the riff structures, and just in general a lot of instruments that you don't typically hear incorporated in this type of music, let alone this genre, saxophone being one of them. While I wouldn't say everything panned out as perfect, it definitely was fresh and unique. But if their last record was all over the place stylistically, it could not have prepared any listener for what The Work was gonna be. To a variety of results. Truly, The Work sounds like a movie, a fully cinematic and fully realized epic tale with moving parts and scenes, or just a lot of chapters of like an odyssey that's told through literature. I think right off the bat, one thing that's really cool about it is it's always ending up at this one common thing, which is the metal portions. It just depends on how you get there, how they lead you there. It's the same destination, but just with a lot of roads that lead to it. I can't emphasize enough that no matter how many influences or how many genres they pile into their one sound, it always ends up in the same really heavy tech death department. This album has a lot more singing, it has strings get used a lot here, it still has the saxophone, still has piano, a lot more piano, but something is weighing on me heavily. Something's weighing on me really heavily, and from the very first track, I cannot unhear it, and the more I listen to this record, I continue to not be able to unhear it. Somber, downtrodden, low in the chords, murky, it has a lot of despair, classical influence with a booming tech death sound, low grumbly singing that is very gothic inspired, deep lyrics, slow instrumentals, that all leads into just a really heavy tech death and progressive metal sound, complete with solos and pianos and strings. Like, punch me if I'm wrong, but does this record not just sound like Rivers of Nihil kinda doing a Swallow the Sun thing? Layering vocals, the production, the riffs, just everything sounds so much like Rivers of Nihil doing a Swallow the Sun thing. Like, I hope I'm not crazy. This is probably one of the records that just sounds the most like a band sounding like another band, even though it's not even conscious. At least I don't think it is. And that's great. I'm not gonna fault it for that. Swallow the Sun literally won my album of the year one year, so what can I really say? But I don't want to hyperfixate on that too much. For real though, the gothic tones on this record are very neat. But one thing is, like, this record is very long. It's a long-ass record, and sometimes you sit there and you're like, can you just get to the point? But that's an issue you run with tracks specifically that are this long. However, I think that they do a pretty good job of making it different, keeping you on your toes a little bit. But do you expect anything less from this band, honestly, at this point? And whether or not you enjoy this band or enjoy the variety, I don't think you can deny that they keep you on the edge of your seat. They keep you hooked for what's gonna happen next. I was at least curious of where it would turn next. And some even bigger surprises kept me on the edge of my seat. Dreaming Black Clockwork's one of the coolest, most multifaceted tracks that I've laid my ears on this year. There's like this hypnagogic noir section that is just so rhythmatically smooth and sensual and just like very slick. To the ending. To the fucking ending. This just It's terrifying, it's horrifying, it's abrupt, and it's noisy, and it's shrill, and it is ear-grating. It sounds like the screams of the damned. It is tortured, it's fierce. One of the scariest musical and instrumental anomalies that I've heard this year. It's very mechanical. It sounds like heavy machinery just whirring and gigging. I can't begin to even guess what was going through their minds when they wrote this. And the surprises only continue from there. The track work is very quiet and subdued. The vocals remind me sort of type O negative, but a little bit more clear, not as just really low down in the throat, with a really beautiful and blossoming instrumental. Very pretty. Like, the sound design is just pretty, which is something you would rarely associate with this band for the most part, even though they have incorporated, you know, violins and strings and just pianos and saxophone. They usually don't really sound pretty. It's just an accompaniment to the heaviness. There are a lot of moments on this record that I genuinely just thought were very beautiful. So I guess you can just add that to the list of just differences here. Because even when it hits the metal roar on this track, it's still pretty. Especially the ending that comes right after the metal part. It's the vocal passages and the way it's mixed remind me of like the 70s or 80s heavy metal scenes, or like the progressive metal scenes just in general. The solos very Devin Townsend-esque, Dream Theater-esque, and of course, and a lot of people were waiting for this, from this band, the saxophone is still here. Those new age saxophone vibes return. I think the track Clean is the best usage of it, most likely. At least in my opinion, the vocals just decide to chill in the back while it does its thing, while you're traveling through like space, I guess. Like, holy crap. Pray for whoever takes LSD or weed while listening to this record, because this record's a trip in its own right, and I was completely sober listening to it, save for like an energy drink or two. I suppose as ambitious as Rivers of Nihil is, they kind of run the risk of being a little too much, sometimes a little too ambitious. Props to them for pushing the boundaries of what conventional tech death and progressive music can really pose, and what you can incorporate into the sound, and how far you can push the limits of how many genres can be infused. But this record is long. It's very, very long. They tend to make long records, and in that longness, their emotions, their capability as musicians sometimes gets lost in translation. Because when you try to dip into so many things, you sometimes lose sight of the initial goal. You sometimes have so many ideas that are transferring and transitioning in one into the other that you forget your goal. And rough transitions, probably my biggest complaint and biggest issue with this record. It's psychedelic, it's hypnagogic, it's heavy, it's throttling, it's depressive, it's gothic, you have saxophones and strings and piano, it's heavy, it's soft, it's fast, it's slow, mixing, varying from track to track, vocal switch up, old school, new school. It hits you so fast that even though it is a long-ass record, literally almost as long as some movies are, it's sometimes hard to comprehend or slow it down and realize what you're hearing, because they're switching it up so fast with so many influences and so many genres that they get a little too ambitious for their own good. They move too quickly past their listener. I have no doubt that they have so many frantic ideas, but it sometimes comes across panicky and not as focused and cohesive of a project as it could be. I don't think this record is as tightly written as their last record, even though it is more emotional and is more diverse and dynamic. I'm not sure if that necessarily works entirely in its favor. But it's truly a benchmark for their career, nonetheless, a very good checkpoint and inspirational. I can't imagine the seeds that bands like this are paving the way for and planting the seeds for the bands in the future. I can't even begin to imagine, and it's really good from start to finish. I don't want to deter anyone from listening to this record just because of that issue. It's still going to get a very positive score at the end, because this is one of those records that I think everyone should listen to this year, because it's going to have something for everyone, no matter what you like or look for in a record. I promise you, you'll find something musically in this, sonically, that is going to translate to something that affects you. Just sometimes Rivers of Nihil has the issue of putting all their ideas in the witch's cauldron and forgetting to stir some of them all the way, so they're just not as well fleshed out or well developed as others. This is a very weird ride though, and one of those records that just floors me. It's rare to hear a record that floors me this much with just how much it changes up and switches up its style, and I think you might have the same experience. I suppose we'll see. Otherwise, this is just a really full, all-encompassing experience that has to be listened to in one go. Take my word for it. I'm going to be giving this album a 7 out of 10, And that is a wrap. Have you heard this new Rivers of Nihil record, The Work? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I would love to discuss this record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.